Hello, everyone. How are you tonight? Tonight we have a special subject to discuss, and that is consciousness. Steve Martin, the comedian, once said in one of his shows, "I learned enough philosophy to really fuck me up for the rest of my life." And that is how you might feel tonight after we discuss some of the philosophy behind studies in consciousness. Mostly because we don't even know what consciousness is. There are some vague definitions we have, but really the study of consciousness is ongoing. And we'll talk a little bit about consciousness and what, like the book that I base this class on, what it says consciousness is and what I feel it is, and we'll talk about that. The book says that consciousness is the mental awareness of sensations, perceptions, memories, and feelings. And I would also add to that consciousness is also a group of assumptions we make about our state of awareness, which we think are shared by others. You know, I think I have consciousness. I don't know if you have consciousness. I can't get inside your head. It's a feeling that only you can have. And like we talked about before, that model of the mind being a castle, and we're launching rocks on a trebuchet inside to see, what we can find out. Well, this is the same thing that comes to consciousness. We try to do experiments to prove the consciousness of others and to prove consciousness in other beings. Do animals have consciousness? Our cats seem to fit some of these descriptions. They dream. They will be kicking in their dream. They'll move their mouth like they're eating something. They learn. They seem to have emotions of sorts. And our cats can even count to 3. After we do a little laser chase up and down the stairs after lunch, we will give them treats. And I usually give them 3 treats. If I only give them 2 treats, they will look around, where's the 3rd? So they can at least count to 3. I count that as having a consciousness. There is one thing I have to kind of address. It kind of came up in questions, comments last week. Someone was saying something about their consciousness being the cause of falling down or tripping or running into things. I would say that consciousness is more the self-awareness, the awareness of a self, the awareness that I am myself. I am here. That other is more of an environmental awareness, watching out for objects, not running into them. But it could be part of the consciousness of awareness. There's also something called proprioceptive awareness. Now, y'all know about the 5 senses. There's sight and hearing and smell and taste and touch. But there's actually another sense, and that is proprioception. And proprioception is the ability to tell where you are in space. It's related to your balance, and it's related to your bodily awareness. How close am I to that other object? So that's part of the awareness, but it's not all of it, okay? One of the things that we can sometimes do with consciousness is just do the old method of introspection. How do I know I'm conscious? How do I know I am me? And this led me to spend one sleepless night this week trying to figure out how to explain this to all of you, because even our top psychologists who are doing research in this today cannot actually describe exactly how that works. So we take another tack. We say, what is not consciousness? There are some processes in our body, like breathing and blood flow and digestion, that we're not conscious of. That's outside of our conscious realm. We don't think about them much unless something goes wrong with those particular processes. And so that's a subconscious, or perhaps even an unconscious process. And maybe when being knocked unconscious, like if you had something fall and hit you and you were knocked unconscious, that's not consciousness. It's sleep consciousness. We're going to talk more about sleep, but we're mostly here talking about waking consciousness. That's what we're trying to define, and we really can't seem to define it. So, if somebody said, who are you? I'd say, well, I'm Carl Witzman. I do shows on YouTube. I write. I was a counselor for many years. I was an information technology specialist for many years. I'm a photographer. I could list all these things. And those are the things that I do, except for about 5 to 7 hours a day. Now, during those 5 to 7 hours a day, I am the king of lightning. Lightning can shoot out of my hands to shock evildoers and make them do the right thing. Oh, that's right. That's like a dream. That's in my sleep. But during that time, I am not the same person. I'm not the same consciousness. I'm aware of myself in a different way. So, which am I? Well, a little bit of both, I guess. At least in those particular forms of consciousness. So, yeah, that's where we are. So basically, when we're talking about consciousness, we're looking at different things, and those things help us, those are the rocks we're throwing into the castle. Those changes in consciousness help us determine a little better what target we're aiming at. If you have a distinct shift in the quality or pattern of your mental activity, that is a change in your consciousness. If you have a change in your perceptions, we talked about perception before. You could have a change in emotional responses. You could have a change in the feelings you have of self-control. Like if you get very angry and you see red, and then you're like, oh, what did I do? Okay? Changes in your sense of time. And changes in your memory ability. All of these things could be things that we could study in the form of consciousness. If there's any questions, please feel free to type them in. We're open to questions tonight. I want to keep this so people can respond tonight. And this is a very difficult topic, so it will help if you have questions. One of the things we like to study, or that I like to study at least, is altered states of consciousness. This is when we're not in our formal waking consciousness, but we have altered. We've made a change, whether on purpose or accidental. One of those is sleep, as we talked about before, and we'll talk more about sleep and dreaming. Okay, dreaming is a little different. Sometimes people will have, especially people who we call neurodivergent today, they will have a sensory overload, perhaps. And that can change their consciousness at that time. It can change how you perceive things. It can change your memory ability. It can change your emotions. Those kinds of sensory overloads, it is too much. And that can be a factor in this. Also, sensory deprivation. If you go to one of these places where they put you in the warm water tank and they turn off the lights and you're deprived of your sensations, that could lead to an altered state of consciousness. Drugs or alcohol can lead to an altered state of consciousness. Hypnosis, and we will talk more about that in a little bit. If you have questions about that, we can talk about those. Monotony can bring along altered states of consciousness. If you've ever heard of something called highway hypnosis, it can happen sometimes. You're driving a long way and you're watching the white line come at you and you just start spacing out, and then you realize, I've just missed the turn, or I don't know how I got here. Altered state of consciousness. Fatigue. If you're very, very tired, that can be a factor in your consciousness. Another possible change in consciousness is near-death experiences. If a person feels like they're going to die, but then they don't, they often come back with very unique stories about what happened while they were in that particular situation. Some people have a religious fervor where they're dancing uncontrollably or they're speaking in tongues and their consciousness has been altered. And daydreaming, which is probably one of our more regular altered states of consciousness. And we have a question. Yes, lucid dreaming. Dreaming is part of the sleep cycle, but not all of it. You are, as far as we know, you're actually unconscious during part of the sleep cycle. And you dream about 4 or 5 times per night. Or you come into the state where you can dream. If you're somewhat conscious in that state, because you really have to come up to that level, you can lucid dream. And that is where you take control of some of the dream. I've done this myself a couple of times. When I did not like the way a dream was going, I said, wait a minute, cut the scene, rewrite, and I have changed the way a dream has been going. Sometimes a couple times during there. One time I was dreaming, and I was dreaming in black and white, which many people do. Actually, it can dream without a color imagery. Their imagery is in black and white. And I was dreaming in black and white, and I thought, I'd like this to be in color. And so, in the dream, I snapped my fingers, and it was in color. Wizard of Oz moment, I guess. So that is how lucid dreaming will sometimes affect your consciousness. You're kind of in between there. Yeah, let's talk about sleep. Most people need between 5 and 11 hours. Some people really need much more sleep than the 7 to 8 they tell you. Some people need less. I usually get by with about 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And then sometimes I'll make it up later. Like 5 days later, I'll sleep for 8 or 9 hours. But most of the time, I only need 5. Some people need much more. This is an individual difference. It might be inherited. We don't know that for sure. If you don't sleep at all, this can lead to problems. At about 100 hours without sleep, you will begin to hallucinate. And we think, from studies, we think this is dreams that are coming into your conscious mind because you need to sleep. You need to dream. This is something important in our psyche. I don't know what it is. Maybe dreams are helping you to work things out, in your mind. Maybe there's subconscious thoughts that are coming to the fore. Maybe that it's a way to process memories. We don't really know why we dream, but we know we have to. And so if you don't sleep, after about 100 hours, you will start to hallucinate. The dreams come into your conscious mind. Auditory hallucinations will come much sooner than that, though. You start to hear things. But you won't see things until probably 100 hours. But yeah, even some people who've gone 24 hours without sleep begin to hear things. It's pretty scary to them, too. One of the ways we study consciousness and altered states of consciousness is we look at the brain waves. And we could go deeply into this, alpha, theta waves, all this stuff. I don't think that's important right now. If you want to know more about that, reach out to me, and I will see about getting you some stuff to read later. But for our purposes here, I think mostly we're going to look about, just say, hey, there's changes in your brain waves. And we can read them on a chart, and we can say, oh, this person is sleeping, and now they're dreaming. I mean, scientists are that good at it now, at interpreting what kind of waves happen at what time and what that means. They've done that basically by sleep studies, and they start to see a particular type of wave, and they wake the person up and say, were you dreaming? Yeah, I was. You woke me up in a great dream, Doc. Thanks. Appreciate it. But that's how we've learned these things. There are other changes that happen in sleep. Sometimes just in that, what we call a hypnagogic state, when you're just falling asleep or you're just waking up. It's kind of like a dawn or a dusk of sleep, for your mind. We call that the hypnagogic state. And while you're in that state, you might have what's called a myoclonus, or a myoclonic jerk. That is not the same as restless leg, but usually it's one of your legs will kick. And it usually wakes you back up. You go, oh, wait, wow, what's going on? It's thought to be a part of the, how do I put this? The sleep paralysis, basically. When you're asleep, and especially when you're dreaming, most of your body is paralyzed by the brain. And that is because otherwise you could be kicking and throwing your arms around. And for some people, this doesn't quite work. So they end up being kickers. And, everybody knows one. This is not under their conscious control. This is all unconscious. While you're asleep, while you're dreaming, you might also have rapid eye movements. And if someone were to lift the lid of your eye, they would see your eyes going back and forth. And this is part of the dream state. This is a slightly less deep sleep. Now, the non-REM sleep, when you're not having rapid eye movements, is the deeper sleep. So, failures in this and failures in the sleep paralysis can also cause problems if people start having night terrors. Some people will jump up and start screaming, and they're terrorized by something, but they're still asleep. They're not awake. They're asleep. And people who suffer from night terrors, this really bothers them a lot. And there's some medicines that might help with this, but for most people, it's a lifelong suffering that they have to put up with. Another problem is that people will start sleepwalking, what you'll call somnambulism. Somnambulism basically means sleepwalking. That's all the word means. We think it's partially hereditary. Don't worry about waking up a sleepwalker. I mean, that's a myth that if you wake a sleepwalker up, they'll die. No, they won't. Because I used to be a sleepwalker. I used to get up and do different things in my sleep. And one time I was going to go outdoors because I was convinced in my dream that my brother was outdoors playing in the street and he was going to get run over. Even though it was the middle of the night. Hey, dreams don't make logic. They don't make logical sense. So I was going to go outside, and my father woke me up just as I was unlocking our back door. And I did not die. So, yeah. Don't worry about that. I have only had sleepwalking during a dream once. Usually sleepwalking does not have anything to do with your dream. So if a person woke up, they will not be able to explain why they did what they did. During one of my incidents, I left my bedroom, got a basketball we had, and I'm not sure where it was at the time. It probably was in my brother's room. I got that basketball, and I walked entirely around our house, which was a circular design, and boom, plopped that right in my mother's stomach. She was real happy about that. I don't know why I did it, but it happened. Okay, Trilena says, my uncle used to sleepwalk, and they had to put a lock on his bedroom door because they found him outside several times. Yes. But that won't stop some of us because I knew how to work the lock, and I was getting out that door. If I hadn't made enough noise, my father would have probably found me in the street yelling at my brother who was supposedly out there. Yeah. So it can be kind of scary. I'm glad that I grew out of it, and most people will. Very few adults will sleepwalk. It's mostly children and teens. We still don't know why. We still don't know why they do it. We still don't know why we stop. Oh, okay. Donna has confessed that she sleepwalked as a kid. So yes, it can happen. Most of the time, though, like I say, by the time you're an adult, you're out of it. Some people have sleep apnea, which is not exactly a consciousness factor, but it can be very scary for people who suffer from sleep apnea. This is when you are going to have irregular breathing during sleep, or you actually stop for certain periods of time before starting back up again. And it's a dangerous situation. People need to see a doctor if they have sleep apnea. Usually you won't know unless you're told, or you just keep waking up and going, I am so tired in the morning. Because it will possibly wake you up during the night, and you're not getting rest during that time. Usually what they will do is they give you that thing you put over your face, and it blows air in to make sure you keep breathing at a regular rate. That works for some people. Other people it doesn't work so well for. So, and the danger in this is that, you will stop breathing for a longer period of time, and, So this is, but this is related to a physical ailment that people have. It's not related to any kind of thing. It just happens to happen at sleep because that's when they might lay on their back, which is the worst portion for a person with apnea. Joe says, I would fall asleep on the couch. My mom would tell me to go to bed, and I would wake up the next morning in bed having no clue how I got there. Exactly. You can walk to your bedroom in that hypnagogic state and you're kind of halfway between sleep and being awake, the last thing you remember consciously was being on the couch, maybe watching TV. But then you wake up in another place and you're like, how did I get here? Which can also be scary. Okay? Joe says that, he could say goodnight to people, get his grandmother a goodnight kiss, and go to bed during that state. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. My mother and brother were sleep talkers. They would talk in their sleep, and you could have full conversations with them. And other people I've known, I won't mention names, but if I say something to that person when they're in that state, they will not remember a word of it later. So, yeah. Make sure the person's totally awake before you talk to them. Get some coffee in them, maybe. We dream about 4 or 5 times a night, I think I said. Usually they're about an hour and a half apart from each other. And during that hour and a half, as far as we know, you're totally unconscious. You're not doing anything as far as conscious awareness is. We usually dream in real time. It might feel like it's a quick flash, like, oh, this is about, I dreamt for about 15 seconds or so. No, usually about 10 minutes to 50 minutes for each dream. You could dream for an hour. Some people remember them. Some people can remember their dreams in great detail. Others will say, I think it was about this. Some people don't remember their dreams. I usually do not remember my dreams at all, unless it's a bad dream. If it wakes me up because I'm upset by it, I will remember that dream. I'm not very happy about it, but I will remember it. So, yeah. Oh, more questions here? Oh, Donna got out of the house at least twice. That's scary. Good thing your mom found you. And Foxy says her mom would talk in her sleep. Foxy ate in her sleep? Oh, my goodness. Sleepwalking and sleep eating, that's very rare, Foxy. Very, very good. You're in a small percentage there. Yeah, but she only remembers her bad dreams too. Yeah, it's a sad thing. But yeah, if it's a good dream, I don't usually remember it. It's only if something turns sour in the dream that I will remember it. I told you a couple of the good dreams I had, but, I won't talk about the other. Okay. Some people think that dreams are a prophecy of the future, and that's not psychology, so I'm not going to talk about that, okay? But I will talk about therapy in dreams. Some people will use dreams or interpretation of dreams as a part of therapy. It's not something I usually do. You can interpret the dreams to maybe tell of some subconscious wants that a person has. When like Donna remembers her dreams, she will tell me her dream, and I'll say, well, if Freud were here, he would say, and I would tell her, but I usually end that with, but I don't buy that. So I'm not much for using dreams as a form of therapy, or as a part of therapy even. Okay, so that was our talk about consciousness. Now I want to talk about my favorite altered state of consciousness, and that is hypnosis. I got interested in psychology in the first place because my mother was a nurse, and she had a book on her shelf called Therapy Through Hypnosis by Raphael Rhodes. And I read through that. I read through some of the therapy they were doing, and I thought, that's very interesting. And that made me want to read more about, psychology in general and therapy in general. So I think finding that book on her bookshelf really helped me define a portion of my life. If someone were interested in just a general book about hypnosis, I'll try to hold that up. G.H. Esterbrook wrote a book called Hypnotism, and I can't see how that looks. Hang on just a second here. Okay, yeah, Hypnotism by George H. Esterbrook. Estabrooks. Good book, if you can find it. It's been reprinted a couple of times. There's some scary parts in here too, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. Hypnotic Realities by Milton H. Erickson is a very good book. This is much more, how do I want to say, much more for the therapist. Basically, anybody could read it and probably understand it. He gets a little deep into the therapy portions of it. Hypnosis has been used and misused for many things. It's been used as entertainment on the stage, and you've probably seen a stage hypnotist do their thing where they say, after I snap my fingers, you'll wake up and you will, do this or do that. A lot of that is probably not so much hypnosis, but like I was talking about, our shared assumptions about our awareness. So people can often think, okay, I've been hypnotized, I have to do this. And there's an assumption that everybody is assuming in the audience that I will do this. So therefore, I have a role to play. I will play that role. I will do the silly thing. Hypnosis is used for therapy. I have used portions of hypnosis in therapy for my usual clientele that I worked with when I worked for the state. In private practice, I've used full hypnotherapy. Mostly habit controls. So a person says, I want to give up smoking, I want to drink less, I want to lose weight. Those things I've had some good track record with. With people who are nervous all the time and need to learn how to relax, hypnosis can be used for that. And they can be taught self-hypnosis. And self-hypnosis can be very powerful. People think, well, no, you can't get into the same state that you were in, but you can get pretty close. And I have been able to change my blood pressure on command using self-hypnosis. We were doing something for our Spanish class at a show at the mall. And we had a little table there, and next to our table were some nurses doing blood pressures. So I said, could you take my blood pressure? They, sure. And I relaxed a little bit, and they said, oh, okay, good. 120/80. Your pressure's good. I said, okay. Can I try it again? And they were like, okay. And I just concentrated, and I got it, instead of 120/80, I got it to 80/50. And they were like, that's not right. I must have made a mistake. Let me take it again. I said, sure. 120/80 again. I did that just by concentrating, using the relaxation techniques, and focusing on constricting the blood flow to that portion of my body. Just to the arm. If I can do that, I could control my high blood pressure, perhaps, if I would just use the self-hypnosis every day and learn to relax. I used it to help myself get over ulcers because I used to be a very nervous type of person. So I know you don't think it now, probably, but I used to be a very angry young man, too. And I got over that by the control that I learned through self-hypnosis. So, one of the things that people ask me all the time, can a person be forced to do something that they wouldn't do while conscious, while waking conscious? You wouldn't do something. Could you be forced to do that under hypnosis? Most of the studies that have been done have shown no. That you will either just come out of hypnosis or you will decide, no, I won't do that. Estabrooks brought up an interesting example in where during hypnosis, he convinced a person that doing the wrong thing was the right thing in a situation. Okay? And he felt that he worked with the CIA for a short time. He felt that he could actually get someone to possibly even commit murder by giving them a rationale while they were under hypnosis that they would then carry on into their conscious mind, perhaps subconsciously, mostly, but they would have a reason, a good reason, to commit the murder. I don't know. And that's not something we want to test or do an experiment on, people. Most of the time, when they've done the experiments, they've done them as something like when you awaken from the hypnosis, you'll hear the word egg, and you will go over and you'll take one of those dollar bills that's on the table, that's sitting over there. Dr. Jones left that on the table, and I want you to take one of those dollar bills and just keep it. Okay, it's yours. And people wouldn't do it. Well, okay, you're in an experimental setting. It's like the Hawthorne experiment when I told you about the lights. They were turning the lights up and down, and people knew they were in an experiment, so their productivity went up. Well, when you're doing an experiment like this, you're in an experiment. You may not know what the experiment's about, but you think to yourself, this is a setup. They're trying to see if I will do this or not. So if you would not normally take that dollar, you probably won't. Now, if you're the kind of person that would say, yeah, I found $1, you're just sitting on a desk, I don't know. Yeah, you would take the dollar. But it's whatever ethic you carry, you will probably keep that, even if somebody tells you in hypnosis to do something different. Okay? But Estabrooks worries me with this. I really wish I would have been able to talk to the man while he was alive, because I really would have liked to have known what kind of experiments he was doing. Very interesting. Okay, if anybody else has questions about hypnosis, I'd be glad to try to answer them in the time we have remaining, or if we don't get to them and you think of them before next time, feel free to put them in the chat next time, and we'll get to those too. Because, it's a very fascinating topic to me, and I don't mind talking about it at all. So, other than that, I just want to come back to say consciousness. What is it? We don't know. We know we have it. We think other people have it. We think some animals have it. We're not sure about trees. And maybe not. Makes you think when you go to cut down a tree, But anyway, that has been our discussion of consciousness. I want to thank everybody for coming by. And don't think about this too much, because like I say, it's just enough to mess you up. And you might have a sleepless night. Thanks.